Time for another episode of One Nation, presented by Tony Bent, Jordan Wilson, Gareth Wheeler, Adam Jenkins here with you. An opportunity to spitball some new names for the show. I don't know why producer Ollie has asked us to do so.
Three Nation today.
Three Nation. I was going to go with Three Wheelin'.
Three Wheelin'.
Whoa, I like that one.
The tricycle.
That's right. That's right. My best friend has a motorized one. That, I've been told I have to drive now after my accident. That,
makes sense.
That is for you. No more trees for Adam Jenkins.
No more snow.
We have gathered this cast of characters to discuss the news of the hour, the news of the day, and the thing that everyone in this ecosystem is talking about, Gareth, and that is the fact that we finally know who will be leading the Canadian men's national team to Copa America, to the World Cup, and perhaps beyond. But we'll focus, of course, on the initial term and what we know and what we think we know. That is Jesse Marsch, who was named the MLS Canada men's national team head coach. Of course, he brings with him his experience with the Red Bull organization, Leipzig, Salzburg, New York, Montreal Impact. Of course, former player. He was on Bob Bradley's staff back at the 2010 World Cup, and most recently with Leeds United in a relegation scrap back in the day. That's the CV, that's the background. We've also heard, Gareth, that he came to that interview very well prepared, that he impressed, obviously, the right people, and it's been announced that it was his job to lose, and he didn't lose it. He has it now. You and I did a show last night with Christian Jack and Alexander Gange-Ruzik on the One Soccer YouTube channel, so I want to get Jordan's first thoughts now, and then we'll have maybe some morning afterthoughts from you, Gareth. But Jordan, let's start with you, where you're at right now with the news of the hiring of Jesse Marsch.
I'll say that I'm happy that things got done before the friendly and Copa America, because that was huge. I just didn't want a situation where you go into these games and it's a second most important tournament that you could ever play in, and for Canada to go into it without a new appointed coach. And at that point, that would be probably, 10, 11 months in of John Herdman saying that he was going to TFC and not having a coach. So I'm glad that's done. I think also Jesse Marsch is definitely reputable and definitely a confident coach. I'm just glad it got over the line. My first initial impression, we're all friends. I can't lie to Gareth. I can sometimes fib you a little bit, but I can't lie to Gareth. My first thought was Jesse Marsch, competent, good. But then I was like, the difference between Marsch and then someone maybe homegrown like a Bobby Smyrniotis, I said, I don't know. But again, I would love to be a spider on the wall in those interviews, not a fly, but a nice little spider, and just listen and see what the pitch was and why maybe you favor Marsch over a Bobby Smyrniotis. And I know there are other candidates, but I'm just speaking simply of Bobby's relationship with Canada and the fact that I feel like he was primed and ready to go. But I think all in all, I know I'm rambling a little bit, but all in all, I'm excited that it's done. It's across the line. I think it's not a tall order for Marsch, but I think he's a guy to come in, and I'm watching him closely because I think it could be a great situation, but you just never know coming in early like this. You just really don't know what. I hope the best for him.
It just gives me more reason to call you Daddy Longlegs and not have a HR complaint, a spider on the wall. Gareth, you've had some time, and I remember seeing you yesterday feeling like you were on, not on the fence, but like you just hadn't let it set in to know kind of which way you were leaning. Do you know yet? Because I know you're talking to a lot of people and you're trying your best to kind of know.
Not really. Look, there's lots of reason for excitement, and the last thing that I want to do is downplay it, because this country needs to come together. Hopefully they found the best candidate available that reflects what they expect from the Canadian men's national team, and they can move forward appropriately. There's no doubt Jesse Marsch is a brilliant guy. He went to Princeton based upon his academics, more so than the footballing side. He's really interesting. He's engaging. His all-in philosophy not only stands for his players, but that's his demeanor as well. And that's why he's done so well in the football world. In terms of resumes, he ticks almost all the boxes, if not all of them. Managing big players, like he's managed players like Erling Haaland before, Dominic Szoboszlai, like really good young players in his time with Salzburg. And I think that because of that experience in European football, as well as understanding what things are like in CONCACAF, even with managerial experience in this country as well, it provides him a good base to build off of. And when I look at him and when I listen to him, he has a little bit of Herdman in him, doesn't he? Kind of like the raw rallied together. I think that's something that most of the players embraced, and I think it's something that I think most players will, he'll get the players excited as well. I just have overriding questions about A little bit to do with the process, how they landed on Jesse Marsch being the best candidate possible. Because along with Marsch, you're taking up on his philosophy. And that philosophy in the way that he plays is very much the Red Bull style, which works within an established structure, and it's a very defined style of play. Does Canada Soccer have a structure? No, we don't. I don't know if I can define the way that we are going to build out this process from top to bottom. Are we now a Red Bull country in terms of the way we play? And when I speak about philosophy, I'm talking about the way that you play. Like a lot of sprinting, a lot of running, being all in at all times, fully committed, intelligent pressing. Not only the first press, but the second press as well is crucial to this style of play. It's chaotic at times, less about maintaining possession, but how to get that ball forward and score as quickly as possible. Is that what we are with the players that we have? Is that something that we're willing to embrace top to bottom? There were a lot of voices across Canadian soccer, really well-respected voices as well at the executive level, at the former players. Kevin Blues alluded to this in the process. But who else within Canada soccer is going to be able to execute and ensure that this is the way that we play? And is this the best way for Canada soccer to play going forward? Like, this can work in club football. You need to be highly organized with that buy-in, with that commitment, with that unity. And Herdman was able to do it to a certain degree, playing his international football. But this brand is a little bit different than John Herdman's style as well, and is it conducive to success in the international game, which is a little bit slower. That's what I'm conflicted on more so than anything else. They have gone all in with Jesse Marsch. Like, when you're asking MLS clubs to help flip the bill. Pay what it costs to bring in a manager like that. That comes with pressure. That comes with expectation. And who knows what else that means off the field, what else that comes with. So they better be really sure that Marsch is the right guy. And he's, more importantly, again, his style of play is the right way to take this country forward.
I just quickly want to talk about a style player. You brought it up, Wheels. We're going to talk about it later and maybe off air, just about the footy, because the footy fans want to know, when Canada lost to the U.S. in the Nations League final, this for me was a moment where you could see Canada plays a certain way. When there's space to attack, they fly forward. They have so many players that can hurt you. What happens when they have the ball and a team says, okay, go and break us down? Do you have someone that can get those players to play better together for Canada? That was always my question. And looking at, you talk about a style of play, and looking at this high pressing, don't necessarily need to be good with the ball under Marsch. Is that going to increase and going to get better? That's the question that I have. It doesn't really look that way. It looks like you're still we're doing the athletic route. And dare I say it, the U.S. as well, obviously in later years, they've had some technical players, but that is usually the way. It's usually athletes and pressing and going into it. And you want to see with a side that we actually have ballers, can we come together and maybe retain? I'm not saying when you go play a top team like a Croatia or France or Argentina that you're expecting to have the ball and take it to those opponents. But you just wanted to see with this Canadian group that I feel like now with a manager that maybe loves that style of play, loves retaining the ball, loves taking it to teams, what this team could do. And it seems as if with Marsch, that's probably not going to be the main priority.
What I think about with this distinct style of play that's obviously his brand, considering the opponents Canada's going to have with the friendlies and with the Copa America, do we think that style of football, Gareth, can get results at Copa America, can get results against the Dutch, the French, the Mexicans? KJ mentions the Americans yesterday too, which will have stories for its own reason. But if Copa America and these friendlies are his first opportunities to lead this team, and this is the type of football we presume he wants to play, do you think it can work?
I don't know. This is what's really exciting about this endeavor. Like, look, there's a lot to like, and I don't mean, and my intention isn't to skew negative, but I do think that this is a much more tricky one to navigate because of those philosophical points of view and perspectives that he comes from. And I don't think that he can be detached from it. Like, sometimes, when he was with Leeds United, he received a lot of criticism because he thought that the team deserved more than it got in terms of points. I mean, 18 and 20 in his second season before he was let go. Stayed there 11 months, but always took a positive perspective about the process. He believes in his process, and I like that about the manager. But he drew ire and criticism when there was pushback about being able to find results. For international football, guys, that's what it's about. It's about results, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And that's why oftentimes, especially when you are looking at a 2-year build towards a World Cup, the idea, the thought process that I think some people brought to the table is bringing that caretaker manager that can get the most out of this team right now. Is this philosophy that comes with Jesse Marsch? Are they going to be able to turn that around quickly and maximize how good of a coach he is? Because he is an excellent coach. Definitely. Are they going to be able to maximize between now and the World Cup? Because with all due respect, Copa America, we're hoping for the best. After Argentina, I think there might be some opportunity. But how quickly can they come together? And is Canada in a position to maximize on what he brings to the table?
And it's not even just a buy-in, Wheels, like you said, like a buy-in to the system, but buy-in to each other playing that certain system. Now, dare I say it, there are players for Canada that are, I won't say superstars, but are very, very, very good players. And you have them, sometimes you have to convince them to go and buy into a system that maybe seems a bit more less than in terms of, hey, we want to keep the ball, we want to try to possess, we want to try to build. We talk about all the time, is it a 2 in the midfield? You feel like Canada now can maybe have 3 and possess certain games. Again, I'm not saying to go and take it to Lionel Messi and friends in Argentina. Sometimes it's okay to sit behind the ball and be organized. But when you look at CONCACAF, you look at Copa America, you look at Nations League, you could see more from this squad. You could see even players that are coming up that could be a bit more progressive, that could play the ball. How do you go against someone who is the way they are? He is who he is, and that you have their style of play with Marsch. So that was my question. That's why I said I have mixed emotions, just because I'm happy a manager came in. I'm happy that he has a distinct brand and style, but is that the best suited for Canada moving forward?
And you could, there is an argument that you can be made, and I'm sure people involved in the process made it, that this Canadian team is best when they're playing in transition.
Very true.
When they're playing aggressive and not passive. And I, my opinion is that's what Marsch preaches more than anything else. He doesn't preach, we're going to play this formation or that formation. It's about style. So, but is that sustainable for them to get the most out of this group?
And can you play like that all the time?
Can you? Yes.
Like, that's where I'm at. It's like, I know it works when it works, but is there a plan B? And that's why I brought up the Nations League final with the U.S., because on that day, bless John Herdman, there was no plan B. Balls were being clipped over the top, trying to find space that wasn't there. Is there a manager that can come in and find a plan B within how they play to get the most out of this squad? I don't think Marsch has that plan. I hope he does, and maybe can show it. But from his resume and from what we've seen, I just don't know if that's there.
Yeah, I mean, his last two stops, yes, he did keep Leeds United up after he took over for Marcelo Bielsa. Really difficult spot for him to take over, in fairness, and did keep them up with a final day victory. I believe it was over Brentford. But after that, things seemed to slide, and he wasn't getting results in season 2. Yes, he lost players like Rafinha in the process, but even when he was, I believe he was a caretaker at Red Bull Leipzig before, I think he won 5 in 14 games. So, look, this will be a philosophical argument. I think that the general public will like this hire because, again, he does have a good resume. And he's an impressive individual. He speaks well. And when he went to Montreal, it was a Montreal Impact coach. He learned French, and he works really hard. There's a lot of things that are very likable, but from a footballing perspective, will that philosophy mesh? And I'm really excited to see how that experiment's going to play out.
Well, let's go there next. What are the expectations then for Copa America this summer? Because you said that's one of the reasons you are excited, is that we finally know. And Jesse now, and however long he has known, and assuming he's going into these meetings pitching a plan, he clearly isn't coming into this willy-nilly blind. Like there are decisions that he has made, or there are ideas he has formulated. So with it, what are your expectations? Because this is a coach that is going to have this incredible experience with this group of players. players. It's going to be monumental for them and their growth on the way to the World Cup that he will be leading them into. So what are you thinking what are your expectations for this summer, Jordan?
I think over the past year, there's been a lot going on with the Canadian men's national team, and it's fair to say that there's been a little bit of a dip, at least in my opinion, right? I think looking at matches and performance and effort, it's kind of just been like that a little bit. I want to see something a little exponential. It doesn't have to be huge, but gradually getting better. And in layman's terms, I'm just saying a buy-in, where all players are committed from top to bottom, from the best player to 23rd, 24th on the roster, whatever it might be, is all together. Because I think for me, when I was watching this team, when they qualified for the World Cup, even at the World Cup, it was, I hate using the term, but that brotherhood was definitely present, but everyone was on the same page. I think as a player, that's what you build from. So that's what I want to see kind of get back to, is that even on a day maybe technically they might not be there, they might be tired, that is still a buy-in and a visible buy-in for everyone watching, that they're all in it together. And I think in that aspect, Marsch could get them on the same page and quickly. Because, I think there's just been a lot of turmoil, a lot of up and down with this national team lately in the past 18 months, I would say. But that's what I want to see. That's the first thing I want to see for Copa.
As a footballing nation, what is the standard that we hold our national teams?
Canada's about to go into Canada's women's national team is about to go in the Olympics, and their expectations are to medal again.
No, that's the proper approach, and that's why I really like when Bev Priestman says we're before the last Olympics we're changing the color of the medal. Now, women's Olympic football and the limited field's a lot different than going into a Copa America when you're playing Lionel Messi in Argentina right out of the gate. It would be silly to suggest that they need results right away, but isn't that what football is all about? Yeah. It might not be that first game, but at some point when you're playing these other nations, you're going to play like Mexico and the United States afterwards. It's a very difficult stretch for any manager to take over, and he probably feels comfortable because this contract, Canada Soccer, based upon their spending and the outlay they put in, I don't think Marsch will feel threatened in terms of he needs to get results right away. I'm not saying that's the best approach, because every country in this world, serious footballing nation, they demand results right away. Are we in a position where we're going to do that? I'm not sure that we're at that point as a footballing nation, to be honest. So I think there's a difference between what the expectation should be versus where it actually is.
Well, what are yours? Is it get a win? Is it like squeak into the knockouts? Like where do you think you are? Is it just you don't know yet because you haven't seen much?
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
With this conversation, Jordan, about the young squad and the veterans that Morbiel had decided it was not time to fully say no to, but move on from. I know on match night you guys were speaking about, one of the questions was, how many veterans do you think are going? And you were shouting out Hoylett's name. Like, how do you think Marsch is going to be able to take the landscape that exists right now with some of the players that were told, thanks but no thanks, we're going to get younger. Now Copa America's around the corner. He's got to study and decide which mix he thinks can be most effective at Copa and in these friendlies. Like, how do you think he manages that?
I think it's tough as well, because I think for me, looking at the side, obviously there are older players. One that sticks out to me is like Steven Vittoria, who's a voice. You can see has a definite presence when he's playing. But then there are these young players coming up that are more than competent and haven't even reached close to the ceiling yet. I think that's up to Marsch. I think that's why I wish I was a spider on the wall, just hearing those, because I'm hoping those questions were asked, right? In terms of what style to play, do you have a plan B? How do you see this program moving forward? But it's one of those things, I think for sure, like Junior Hoyle, he's been in great form. He's probably one of those vets. I hate saying it, but like I think he's, 33, 34? Like he's one of those guys that still could play a little bit and show and maybe be inching for this next World Cup squad from his quality. But that's up to him, what direction you want to go. You see with many national teams, this happens usually every cycle. Every 4 years, it's like, do you hold on to that group that you have? Do you ride that out a little bit? Or do you bring in the new
But this is fresh.
Yeah.
This is fresh. And quite frankly, unless Marsch just completely changes the way that he manages, which I don't think he will, he needs players that can run.
Yeah.
He needs players with legs. So if you're older or slower or can't press, then you're probably not going to be a favorite of Jesse Marsch.
Yeah, there's a few names, like, where does that leave a Sammy Piet? Well, he was on the bubble in midfield. Like,
again, this is going to be Jesse Marsch's decision, but there's been a transition where Biello made some sweeping changes, kept some players around for a game. It might be a little bit more of a hybrid, but now it's, it's brand new. It's brand new. So, and everyone should be prepared for it. Yeah. Like this is the man that's been entrusted to oversee this program. And he's going to pick who he believes can execute his style of play the best.
And this is it. Managers have it. And it's the funniest thing in the world. A manager that wants to play tiki-taka football favors certain players. Yeah. A manager that wants to go and high press at that, wants guys that Wheel said that have legs, favors certain players. But you're looking at this Canadian side, there's certain players you can't leave out. And there's certain players that thrive under that system. So it's funny. I'm curious to hear even players say about this appointment and having Jesse Marsch there, because, yeah, you'd look at this team, they could play a different style. I think they could at times, but would you get that under Jesse Marsch? I don't think so.
There's an interesting undercurrent to this, and that is the passport that we haven't spoken about yet. And the idea that some people who have played for the national teams, some people who follow the sport, broadcasters, medias, think that that's not automatically disqualifying, but if you're going to have apples to apples or comparable candidates, maybe you lean away from the American. But now that the American has been chosen, we can consider the fact that he told many people that he was not interested in the U.S. job, didn't want it. He chose Canada. And now there's this really interesting feud with he and Greg Berhalter, Gareth Wheeler, and with the forthcoming match with Canada and the Americans, the storylines, the layers of reigniting this rivalry. I think the Americans have sort of run off into the distance as CONCACAF's best team for a while, and now you have Marsch trying to rile up his boys and try and show that Canada still wants to be in that conversation.
What I don't want this to be is the Jesse Marsch revenge tour.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I didn't become the head coach of the U.S. men's national team. Greg Berhalter did, and they've had some little back and forth and stuff, which is fine. I thought he did a really good job as a pundit, but this isn't about Jesse Marsch or Greg Berhalter. This is about Canadian soccer. And although he did say, recently with Jimmy Conrad and Tony Meola that he didn't want the job, I've listened to him on other podcasts and him say that it was intriguing because the chance to coach at a home World Cup. But he always used the term our. Like he's a proud American coach and he should be. That's what's interesting to me is why did he choose Canada? Like he is American. And by the way, I subscribe to go out and get the best manager theory.
Sure.
Like it doesn't really bother me personally, but I know other people, the reaction that I've got was disappointed in that because they'd say, well, you wouldn't want like, an Argentine manager, managing Brazil and blah, blah, blah. I don't think we're there yet as a footballing nation. And if they believe that Jesse Marsch, really smart people believe that Jesse Marsch is the best candidate available, then that's fine for me. But the one thing that he did say is that his initial desire was to stay in Europe. Like he turned down the Southampton job. It was tumultuous at the time. It looked like they were potentially getting relegated. I just don't think that he had any assurances about what the future of that club would look like. But it seemed like he was destined to go back to Europe and managing club football. This is a departure from that. Yeah. You're going to a country that you've been in before, and I'm sure that he likes it here. Why wouldn't he? But it's not the United States. It's not that job. This story about Marsch being hired as a Canadian national team head coach, this is maybe even a bigger story in the United States than it is in Canada. And he affectionately, when he talks about the United States, says our. The one thing that was really cool about John Herdman is I never really thought about that guy from Northern England, right?
No, it's true.
Because he beamed with Canadian pride. He'd be on the touchline and belting it out and making sure that he established within that group what it meant to represent Canada. I don't think that's going to be Marsch's approach. I might be wrong. I just can't see him on the touchline being that sort of figure. Perhaps Canada doesn't need that anymore. But to a certain degree, I think the players did thrive off it.
Yeah.
So that's the passport issue, for me about coaching style and philosophy and what he can do. That matters. I just think that it's all the intangibles that come along with it, and that's why it'll continue to be an issue.
I think
To some.
I think you want to see, for me, sorry, I won't speak for anyone else. For me, I want to see a buy-in, whoever is coaching a Canadian national team that isn't Canadian, to fit into the context of what this means, right? 86 qualifying for a World Cup. As there on the day when they beat Jamaica, literally my dad cried, and like qualifying for another World Cup. And what it means, I think for the Americans as well, obviously they've had World Cups that they haven't been to, but for a very long time, as long as I've been alive, like they've been pushing athletes to go and compete, and then later on, you could say 20 years ago, they have a system already in place on all fronts. For Canadians, as much as we have a talented group, this is still such a moment, right? And you could ask the Kamal Millers and all the players you saw that were that cowballing, right? When you're looking at the first game at the World Cup and what it meant. We had Daniil sitting in his chair right here, what that meant, missing out on that still being there. That's what it is being Canadian. So I'm not saying that you need to go Jesse Marsch and be Canadian, but you definitely need to buy into that process of what that means being from up north and being that Maple Leaf and what that represents. So I'm not saying you have to be Canadian, but you have to buy into that because it's a different world over here in terms of playing footy and what that means for Canadians.
It's been such an emotional ride, like through the real highs. And I think it's just our pride in being Canadian in general, but
almost overlooked in the sport. I think that's huge.
Football, that's completely different. You know, and Jesse can relate because he probably felt that being an American coach in the UK. And he was critical about the way that Bob Bradley was treated. He understands. But for Canadians, there's a sense of pride that we've had to persevere in a much more difficult way because we've been forgotten about, overlooked. It's been much more difficult over the course of our lives to pursue footballing careers in this country. We don't take that for granted. And that's why people care so much about the good, the bad, everything to do with this. So I do think that Canadiana, or whatever you want to call it, factor, I think it matters. But now we're going on years and years and years without having a Canadian head coach with this team. Like Floro, Zambrano, Stephen Hart's a transplanted Canadian. I can kind of consider him Canadian, but he's from Trinidad and Tobago. Herdman, it's just, I don't know how much overall that matters, what your passport says, but I think there are intangibles that do matter through it.
And I think also, too, I'll quickly just say, at a time where I think there are definitely qualified Canadian coaches that could have been considered. Granted, I wasn't there on the call. I wasn't the spider on the wall. But you see, going to the American side, when you have qualified guys, you're like, this could have been the time where someone could have taken that role.
And I will say, I think his experience in Montreal is going to help key into some of those emotions that you just spoke about, with the passion that city has, not only for their club, but just a passionate city to be. And I think he'll be able to lean in some of those experiences and use them to push himself forward as he ingrains himself in the national community here. With just a few minutes left, though, Jordan, I'm curious. I'm not going to pretend that you think that he has to listen to you or he should listen to you, but if you had his ear, or if you were a spider that could talk, on that wall,
that's a nice little
what advice would you give him?
Honestly, I think the advice I would give him is probably what he's already heard and he's probably going into, right? I think with this unique group, I was preaching it before when you're thinking about which manager would come in, and it's who's going to really demand or gain or garner respect when you step into that room. I think he'll do it a different way in terms of the way that he just wants to win. And I think players that are in that room will go behind him. But I would say just stand 10 toes down on what you believe in. Obviously, you're appointed for that job for a reason, that the people that are higher up believe that you can do it. So I think he's gone into locker rooms and had to win people over with his personality. So I'd say just continue being himself.
I wouldn't give him any advice because he knows more about football than...
There it is.
That's fine. But I'd give a recommendation to Kevin Blue and people at Canada Soccer. You need to build that system out from Jesse Marsch. You need to surround him with a structure that, whether he's here or if he leaves after 2026, that's sustainable.
Yeah.
It has to be. This is a process. And we need intelligent soccer people making footballing decisions in this country. And right now, Jesse Marsch has joined a structure which has more questions than answers, let's put it politely that way. And much more football know-how, and one that's pointed needs to be put into place in order for this whole thing to come together the way that we hope.
It's a huge task for just one man, right? You need a village, you do. Like, so what do you need more than one guy calling the shots and helping out, so.
Well, the good news is we were going to spend a few days here talking about the resume and the what ifs and what might become, but we're less than 5 weeks away from Copa America beginning. We had those friendlies just around the corner.
Come on.
And it's Jesse Marsch's team now. So
Excited.
very soon we'll be able to start gossiping and deciding and doing our best at punditry to say what the formation is going to be, who's going to play, who's in, who's out, the meat and potatoes of what this means and how much we love it. And we're just so excited. Congratulations, Jesse. Thanks for joining us on One Nation, presented by Tony Bennett.